Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Forestry and Sawmill Roundtable. We're glad you could make it here tonight with us. We have the regular crew here tonight. We have Tim with Two Brothers Outdoors, Paul with Southern Adirondack Outdoors, Michael Wilson from Wilson Forest Lands. We have John Davison from Davison's All Natural Gym, or DANG, and we have Eric from the Old Jarhead channel. And special guest with us tonight, we have Jack Beckwith. He's a representative, Northeast District Manager, correct, Jack?
That's correct.
For Wood-Mizer, and he's joining us tonight. He's going to tell us about Wood-Mizer, and then he will be open to questions. So go ahead, Jack. Tell us about Wood-Mizer.
All right. Well, thank you, guys. It's a real blessing anytime we can get together and talk about sawmills, anything forest related. And just as I've in my time in this industry, I've realized that most of our customers are just good, wholesome country folk, and just grew up the same way I did. And it's again, a real blessing to work with our customers. Again, name is Jack Beckwith. I am the Northeast Sales Manager for Wood-Mizer. I've been with Wood-Mizer for just over 8 years now. I started as in a customer service role. So in Wood-Mizer, customer service rep will work on sawmills, do routine alignments, maintenance on mills for customers, time on the road, also work trade shows and demonstrate the product, and train customers how to run the product. So our LT28 model and above all have a training included in the price. And so we train the customers how to, the basics on operation on the mill. And so I did that. And then the role of regional sales manager came available for the Northeast. I applied for it. About 6 years ago, I've been serving in that role. Senior leadership at Wood-Mizer allowed me this opportunity. So it's been a real blessing working for a good industry like the forest products industry, and also for the best company in the industry. Talk about Wood-Mizer. What is Wood-Mizer? I think most of us that are probably joining us in this call are familiar with the name Wood-Mizer. Wood-Mizer was founded in 1982 by two gentlemen by the names of Don Laskowski and Dan Jacolby. And they invented this product of this portable sawmill, invented this monorail cantilever head design based on just a need they had. They needed something to cut lumber, and very entrepreneurial spirit those two men had, and started a company. And I don't think they thought it would be what it is today. And so today we not only manufacture sawmills, our slogan is "From Forest to Final Form." I'm sure most of you have seen that on marketing materials of ours, but we deal with the log from sawing it into lumber on the sawmill. We sell kilns to dry that lumber. We also sell secondary processing equipment such as molder, planers, grip saws, things of that nature, to put it into its final form. And so we're adding innovative products to our catalog every year, and always looking to improve our products. Constant discussion with our customers that are actually using our products in the field, and listening to their needs and what they would want to see in a sawmill or in a piece of equipment used in the forest products industry. So again, thank you for having me, and I look forward to answering any questions that you do have.
Okay. I know you got a lot of new equipment coming out on the horizon. Is that true?
We do. And so there are a couple of highlights, I guess, for new equipment, and they're on both ends of the spectrum, as in capabilities and price. And so this year we've highlighted on the hobby mill end our LX50 lineup. So that's LX50. So we have our LX50 Start sawmill. an LX50 Super. So there are two sawmills that would be in the hobbyist price point. And so, like, for example, our LX50 Start is priced at $32.95. And right now, that is free shipping to your door, $32.95 for a Wood-Mizer sawmill. And so that mill, just for example, is capable, of sawing most logs that someone would have in a hobby is 26-inch diameter and smaller. It'll do 23.5 inches between the guides. It comes with just over 10 feet of track with bed extensions you can add on to that. So that's really a nice mill for someone that just wants to cut a few logs and get their feet wet in the sawing. And we have an LX.
That's kind of the updated LT10, isn't it? Really, it's just a little bit better, a little longer, a little more power.
Yeah, that's kind of what it was. We had that LT10 model that was definitely the entry level Wood-Mizer, and we were able to add some improvements there and get the price down a little bit for customers. We also had the LX50 Super, which just about very similar sawmill, has a couple added features in the bed, more horsepower there, 14 horse on there, and so a nice mill. On the other end of the spectrum for a new product would be our WM 2500, and that's a new industrial sawmill. A WM 2500 would be a mill for someone that was in the LT70 range right currently. They're looking to grow a little bit in their business. And so the WM 2500 is a 3-phase electric sawmill, and has a 30 horsepower electric motor on there. Very sturdy bed frame, but not quite as expensive, and doesn't have all the features of our WM 4500. So it allows customers to kind of grow gradually and have a kind of a healthy price point there. That mill starts at
I was going to ask that because I know that you've had the WM series for a while, and I think you had one that would mill, and that was a bandsaw that could do about 6 feet or something, couldn't it? You had some really big mills.
Yeah. So the WM 1000 would be that mill that would do 67 inches between the blade guides, and that was for breaking down large logs.
Right.
And then, if you wanted to do big flitches, big slabs. And then when the 2500, 4500, those are head rigs that you would use to either saw the log right from start to finish lumber, or of course, industrial products, would be pallet material, ties, different size cans, things like that. Very versatile product. So a couple new products there, and there's always something new coming out from Wood-Mizer. So keep your eye out.
So let me ask you, Jack, what is the biggest portable mill you make?
So that would be our LT70. And so our LT70 is powered with a diesel engine. And so that would be either for someone that wants to be portable, but wants the speed of the hydraulics, wants the horsepower for the speed of cutting. And, they like the setworks operation that comes with the 70. So it'd be for that customer, or a small industrial customer that does not have access to 3-phase power. So just for example, we installed an LT70 at a mill in Rhode Island this week, and that mill was paired with a log infeed deck, a incline conveyor coming off the LT70 onto a transfer deck, and an EG200 twin blade edger. And so with that system, you're really seeing the capability of the LT70, where you can keep the blade in the wood. You're not waiting for someone to pull a board off, and you can just keep sailing, sending that lumber down the line, and that's where you'll see your biggest board foot per hour rating.
Yeah, and there are quite a few guys that run LT70s in that kind of environment. Some of them, like Robert Milton or Jake, guys like that don't always have the conveyors, but they're producing a lot of lumber. In Robert's case, it's mostly hardwoods, but I know Jake does tons of softwoods. I mean, that's a big operation he's got. So those LT70s will definitely do that.
Yeah. The other, benefits of the LT70 is the cut capacity. It'll handle, 36 inches, between the guides. So that wide head 70 is really nice for that. Bigger band wheels, so you can comfortably run a 55 thousandths thick band without flex life issues. You can run a wider band comfortably, inch and a half, and 55 horsepower. And then we also have very quick hydraulic function. So turning the log is very fast with the LT70.
Anybody else got questions? The floor is open.
I was wondering about the. Go ahead, Mike. Cole.
I wasn't doing it. Go ahead, Paul.
We see videos on LT15s and so forth in Europe, and they have debarkers and log turners and hydraulics. Is there any thought to bring that to the U.S.? So that someone could upgrade without having to spend a small fortune on a LT40 or 70?
Yeah. So that's always in discussion with engineering, and we've, those products in Europe have come out of a customer demand in Europe, and the LT15 head that we do market in Europe is a different saw head. It is a little bit different design. They do call it the LT15, but there's quite a few differences in the structural components there, and so allows for the debarker. It's definitely not out of the question for Wood-Mizer to bring a debarker on those mills. And, if once we're still kind of discussing that, whether we want to bring them onto that sawmill. We do have some mills we came out with that are on the manual mill, like the LX 150. That was the product that we came out with in the U.S. that had simple set works as an option, a debarker option. But also it was a, on the ground manual log handling sawmill.
Let me ask you, Jack, what is your most popular selling mill?
Well, I guess I would break it up into two categories. So on the smaller end, and very popular as of recent, the LT15. I would say is kind of the flagship manual mill of ours, whether it be the LT15 Start, LT15, or LT15 Wide, some variation of that, is a very, very popular mill. And then on the hydraulic side, we've always called our flagship mill the LT40, and that's been very popular. But the LT35 hydraulic has become very, very popular just because that's our entry-level hydraulic. The price point is there. So if someone wanted to do, saw just for themselves or just for their farm, maintain their farm buildings, they couldn't quite make the stretch to buy an LT40, but the LT35 that fits in their budget, and they can do an occasional saw job with the LT35. And I know many people that saw professionally every day with an LT35. So very capable mill for a lower price point.
Now, when somebody comes to you and they want to buy a mill, first mill they're buying, I would guess you probably ask them certain questions so you can fit them with the proper mill.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I was just kind of looking on my wall. So on the other side of my office here, there's a list kind of from some sales trainings with my salesmen and my customer service guys here. But we always stress that we want to listen to the customer story first, and the customer may come in, and lots of times they have an idea of what model they want. They've done the research. They've watched the YouTube videos. They've watched Nathan Elliott. They've watched Jake. They've watched, they've watched Eric. They've watched all these folks on YouTube, and they have a kind of an idea what they want, which is different from when Wood-Mizer first started, that you'd have to go to the county fair and watch one, or you have to go to Boonville, or And so they've got an idea of what these models are, and they can rattle off the accessories that come with each model. But we want to. I always tell my salesmen, we want to really seek to understand, then to be understood. Not for everybody here that remember that Stephen Covey book, but that's so true to kind of listen to see what do you need the sawmill for? What are your plans for the sawmill? What kind of logs are you going to saw? As in, size, species. How many are you looking to saw? We've had customers come in and say, "I'm looking for an industrial sawmill," and I've had salesmen say, "Oh, well, I better get you in touch with a member of our industrial team." And you find out industrial to that customer means an LT35. That's industrial to them. That's a big mill for their operation. So really need to understand what the customer's needs are, and go from there. And so, we'll sit down with the customer, see what those needs are, and then our job really is to fit them in a sawmill that meets their needs, not to upsell them or sell them with a feature that we don't think they'll ever use. And by doing that, we've gained their trust as customers will buy the LX50 or the LT15. They get the bug. They love it. They develop this business that they never imagined they would ever have there. They people are coming from all over the place to buy 2x4s and whatever. And they end up growing to a hydraulic mill, and then they grow up to the next one. We've had some customers that grow into the industrial mills and have 20 plus employees now. They started on that manual mill end. And so, but you do that by gaining the customer's trust, by just, listening to them, seeing what their needs are, and being there to make them successful.
Yeah, it's funny you say
people
that.
who buy a mill like mine, a LT15, end up upgrading.
What's
Something
that, Michael?
big.
I missed the first portion.
What percentage of people who buy something like an LT15 like mine end up upgrading to a bigger mill?
Yeah, I don't know if to shoot out a percentage there, but it's quite frequent that happens. And what I tell customers, that I let them know in their first buying experience, this may happen. And you may really enjoy this, and I believe you will. I haven't had anybody that sawed a log that didn't get the bug. I mean, it's something about it. And I kind of warn them, it may happen. And when it does, the Wood-Mizer brand seems to hold its value. And so we've had customers trade them in. We take trade-ins on Wood-Mizer equipment on a larger model. But we've also seen folks run them for 2, 3, 4 years, cut thousands of feet of lumber, and then they move on to they can sell it for what they paid for it, brand new, maybe lose no less than 10% often, and buy their hydraulic mill. Eric's raising his hand. He might be familiar with that story.
Well, the LT10 is how I started.
Okay.
$3,500. LT10 and 10 bands back in January of 2011. And in December of 2015, I sold that mill on a trailer that looked an awful lot like an LT15 Go trailer. And thanks to some Wood-Mizer folks, had an LT28 log clamp. They gave me the design for it, so I had it done. But I sold that mill for exactly what I paid for it, including the trailer, from 5 years early, after milling thousands of board feet of lumber, and got my LT40 and paid for that in 13 months. So I always chuckle, like with Michael's question, I know a lot of guys with LT15s that keep them because that, frankly, is a very good sawmill. But there's a lot of them find out they can sell that mill for what they paid for it and get into an LT40. And, and me, I think the LT40 is the industry standard. That's my personal opinion, but I have beat the ever living heck out of mine for 8.5 years and just keeps on ticking.
All right, guys. We're getting a lot of questions from the audience. Are we ready to take questions from the audience?
Yeah, we better catch up with the audience.
Yeah.
Sure.
All right, Jack, the questions will pop up at the bottom of the screen right there.
Okay,
You can read the question and answer it, or
sure.
we can move.
So we have one that says, will Wood-Mizer stick on band mills, or can we expect a circular swing blade mill with a bed and hydraulics as a Wood-Mizer bed in the future? Will be a game changer. So, I don't know. I want to speak for, the future, or, but as I'm aware of, we don't have any thing in the pipeline for anything, but especially on the portable mitt side as other than a band mill. And that's kind of what our name is, Wood-Mizer, why we were founded, being miserly. We, band, thin kerf band technology takes low horsepower. It's a thin kerf and, very little waste. And so that's where that Wood-Mizer name came out of. And we've been very successful with that. And with, Wood-Mizer is, the only sawmill manufacturer that manufactures their own blades. And we manufacture them for many other bandsaw companies. And private label for some. And so we're always looking to, put innovation in that technology. And so through that, we've been able to cut at faster feed rates than we first started. And we've been able to cut species all around the world. We've had sawing applications for species of wood in Africa that are very, very hard to saw. And we've developed blades that are even able to cut them. For example, we have a blade that's on our website now. It's a frost notch style blade that the industry has been asking for. There were a couple other band companies that were selling a product that was similar, had a notch in the tip or a notch in the billet to help with frozen sawing applications. And I did some testing up here in the Northeast. One of the most difficult woods to saw in the wintertime in the Northeast is hard maple, sugar maple. And the issue you have is sawdust packing. And I know folks that saw, in frozen climates know what I mean. That pancake flour that instantly freezes to the cant as soon as you cut there. And that causes, cutting issues with band blades. And so we've come up with blades that combat that. The turbo profile has definitely been a game changer in that regard. A deeper gullet that carries the sawdust out into the sawdust chute instead of leaving it behind or spilling out of the gullet back onto the cant. And this frost notch definitely helps keep that sawdust moving, broke up, and shoot out the sawdust chute. So next one here, what does a trade-in look like? How many hours typically on a trade-in? What percentage of MSRP do they typically get at normal use for those hours? So those trade-ins are on a case-by-case basis. So that sales location will take it in. They'll offer two numbers to the customer, a trade-in value, and then we call an orange book value, just like Kelly Blue Book called an orange book. And that's what we would be comfortable selling that retail for. And it's case by case basis. When we sell a sawmill as a used sawmill through Wood-Mizer, we go through everything, and it's got to be kind of top notch to be able to go out our door. So if you sold it outright, you probably wouldn't go through the steps that Wood-Mizer would. So we do spend quite a bit of labor hours and money and parts, and so of course you're going to trade-in's going to be a little bit less there, but there's a convenience factor that plays in effect too. So most of our customers in the last couple of years have chose to sell them outright just because of the demand for Wood-Mizer sawmills have been so big. So they've had good luck putting on Facebook Marketplace, and then that day they sell the sawmill, and then they can come get their new mill for Wood-Mizer. Jennifer's asking, why don't you have a drag on conveyor to take the sawdust away from the mill? So we have a couple different options for sawdust removal. One would be our sawdust conveyor. So we do offer a conveyor that is about 20 feet in length, and it's about a foot off the ground, and it travels the path of your sawdust chute. And so the sawdust chute would be right into this conveyor. It'd go into this 20-foot long conveyor. The conveyor then inclines up so it can jump into a hopper or bin, whatever you have for the sawdust. So some customers choose to use that. The other option they can use, and I've seen customers do this, is use our chip extractors or our blower systems that we offer mostly for our woodworking equipment. And but customers have used those with flexible hose hooked up to the sawdust chute. They'll take their rubber tube off and put a 3.5-inch hose on the end of that with just a hose clamp, carried either by a festoon or just a lot of hose loose. And then that carries out to a blower and out to a silo or bin to capture the sawdust. This is from James here. Any thoughts to a set of manual or hydraulic rotating end dogging attachments for the small band mills, 1-inch fixed, one movable, to adjust for log length, both which hide in the frame of the mill? And so all of our manual sawmills come with a set of clamps, like our LT15. We'll pick on that model there. That comes with 2 clamps that's adequate for the length of bed that it comes with. And then if we are, this is where it comes into play, having that discussion with the customer before they buy. If they're looking to saw longer material and they're buying, the LT15 is a perfect mill for someone that's timber framing. They want to saw a timber that's 30, 40 feet long. You can add bed sections to get it out that long. But we also realize that you may need additional clamp for that. And so we sell clamps that can bolt just about anywhere in that bed frame, or, the holes are tapped for them. And so you can just bolt that clamp wherever you see fit. On the hydraulic mill end, we have on the portable mills, the bidirectional clamp that we have there is adequate for that length. On our bed extensions, we have an additional clamping system that's on our bed extensions that hold the log down the other end. On our industrial sawmills, such as the WM4500, we've got clamps in the middle. We've got hold downs on the end, so we can pull down the plume to combat stress in the log for the larger logs. So, so our mills are very well equipped to hold the log in place.
So I think, Jack, I'll be honest with you. I was going to ask James if he could clarify that, because I see something in that question where he says hydraulic rotating end dogging. And I thought, okay, are you talking about an option to roll the log or something to hold? I'm a little confused by your question, actually, James. So maybe if James can pop that in and just clarify, and just in case Jack explained how you're dogging down all the logs, the log clamping, but I wasn't sure that's really what you meant, but I didn't understand it. So just help us out, James.
Okay, so what grade stellite is used in stellite blades? They dull fast, bimetal's expensive, carbide too brittle and expensive. We cut high silicon content wood, which dull carbon blades in one pass. And so I'm not sure where you're located. Sounds like maybe outside of the U.S. We do sell stellite blades in some regions of the world. We used to sell them here in the U.S., but we don't anymore. The demand wasn't there in the U.S. And so in our razor tip line, we sell a carbide tipped blade, and we sell the bimetal blade as well. And those blades are what we would call a premium blade that have a harder teeth that are for sawing applications where your teeth dull quickly. And, species of woods with high silica contents, we certainly can cut. We've had great luck with the stellite when we did have it in the U.S. We do offer it in other locations in the world, including Africa. I believe they still market the stellite there, and the carbide tipped does a good job there as well. So Yeah, I'm not sure on that Stellite product, so we're not marketing it currently. So sorry I couldn't answer that question fully.
Well, I honestly, bimetals, I love bimetals for burned logs, old dry stuff. I mean, if you're running into that problem, I realize, bimetals are spendy, but if you're doing it for a hobby, that's one thing. But if you're doing it for a business, that's a business expense. And if I were in that shoes, I'd be running bimetals all day long.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've always, had good luck with bimetals for reclaimed lumber, old barn beams and things like that you're looking to saw, old highline poles, cedar poles, really tough drying or sawing environments, and the bimetal
burn logs are like case hardened logs.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
Or bug killed Douglas fir. That's hard too. The bimetal work well on those.
Yeah.
All right, Jack, we have another question. Okay,
the Kilted Sawyer. Will carbide bands be available soon from Wood-Mizer? And so we did have some backlog of carbide, or not carbide blades, due to supply issue. But I did speak with our blade product managers regarding that, and they are catching up. And so we do have supply that has been fixed, that issue, and we are catching up on orders, and we should be in a good place here soon on carbide. Thunderous Night, Jack, do you have a mill? And if so, what do you run? And so I grew up
with cooks.
What's that?
Don't say a cook's mill.
Yeah. All right. I'm interested. I'm listening, Jack.
Yeah. So I grew up. We've had Wood-Mizers on our we have a tree farm here in New York State, and we've used Wood-Mizers to upkeep our buildings on the farm. Different models. We've used the Wood-Mizers to build camps in the Adirondacks, Tug Hill region, and then actually recently we sought out my dad's vacation home in Indian Lake, by Blue Mountain Lake in the Adirondacks in New York State. And so we sawed it all out of hemlock off our farm down here in the Oswego region, South Shores Lake Ontario, and we hauled all the lumber up there. But every bit of it we sawed out, including the studs for the interior walls. Every 2x4 was sawed on a Wood-Mizer. And which model? What's that?
Which model, Jack?
Yeah, so LT15s we've had around, and then since I've been with Wood-Mizer, one of my favorite mills, the LT40, LT50. Those are one of my favorites, and so. Just the other day, we sawed some cherry for that same home in my dad's camp. We saw some cherry with an LT40, Super, AccuSet, diesel, all the bells and whistles. But yeah, so I encourage all of my employees to be familiar with the product. And, if they have a project and they need to do a little sawing, encourage them to do that. And that's how they're going to know. That's how you're going to know what to do, what not to do, and to pass that on to customers. And let's say two out of my three techs that work out of the location own Wood-Mizer saws. One has an LT15, one has an LT40. And when they get done talking to customers on the phone or training them customers all day long here, they go home and they saw lumber. I mean, so they got the bug, and they really enjoy it.
Sawdust in the veins.
Yeah. Jack, Eric was talking when we had Mike Sperato here with Hudson. He was talking about what was that program, Eric? Where the Sawyers?
The Pro Sawyers program.
Yeah, can you explain that a little bit for us, Jack?
Yeah. So we have what's called our Pro Sawyer network. And that came out of, we can't be everywhere in the country. I mean, we have more sales locations, and we're in more neighborhoods than anybody else in the industry. We take that seriously, and we want to make sure that customers have access to us. And so we have our branches and our authorized sales centers all over the U.S. And then our emerging markets team are growing into more countries every year in the world. But here in the U.S., we developed what's called the Pro Sawyer Network, which allows our current Wood-Mizer customers to that have had experience with their sawmill and use their sawmill frequently. They can demonstrate their product, their sawmill, to customers that are looking to buy a Wood-Mizer. And so frequently a customer will call and say, well, I want to see an LT40 run. And I'm in, this is my zip code. And if we don't have a trade show in the near future and that customer wants to see an LT40 run, we'll refer them to one of our Pro Sawyers. And so give them their phone number. Of course, these folks have signed up for this program with Wood-Mizer, given us permission to give their number out. And once they've demonstrated the sawmill to the customer and that customer purchases a sawmill from Wood-Mizer, that potential buyer that purchases a sawmill from Wood-Mizer, we award the Pro Sawyer with a credit, and it's, substantial credit, on the hydraulic side, LT35, LT40, it's a $500 credit used to buy parts, blades, anything from Wood-Mizer. LT40 and above, I think it's like $750, so we do reward them for their time spending with a potential buyer of a Wood-Mizer, demonstrating their mill, and it's a great program. And as a buyer, I think it's somewhat comforting to talk to somebody that's ran a mill, that hear that they're happy with the product. You can talk to the sawmill salesman at Wood-Mizer, but it's also reassuring to have an owner there that's satisfied with the product. So that's been a great program. We also, with that Pro Sawyer Network, have a listing where if a customer doesn't want to purchase a sawmill, but they want someone to come cut their lumber, they can go on the Wood-Mizer website, put in their state, and find, and there's a whole list of Pro Sawyers there that they could call to have them come portable and saw their logs or bring the logs to them or what have you.
Yeah, I'm curious, and I don't mean to put you guys on the spot, but I'm curious because I think that if you're not part of that network, you might be losing out. So I've been in the Pro Sawyers network since 2011, I think, maybe 2012. But I'm wondering, Michael, John, Paul, Andy, have you guys signed up for that?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, so there's an application around the Wood-Mizer website. So if you went to woodmizer.com, services tab, Pro Sawyer Network.
So Michael, no. Andy, Paul, no. John, did I hear you say yes?
Yeah, I suppose that'd be my only question for Jack for the whole night. But yeah, I'm in there. I'm in the Pro Sawyers Network. And so I guess my only question is the customer can't search the database by anything other than state. So I live right on the Indiana-Illinois line. If somebody in Indiana searches for a sawmill, they could be 5 miles from me and never find me because I'm in Illinois.
Gotcha.
You know what I'm saying? If that was, I asked Eric this though when he went to Wood-Mizer a year or so ago, and and I've called Indianapolis too, and they always say they're working on that. You know what I mean? To where somebody could search that database by a zip code.
Okay.
And it would just be, you know what I'm saying? Because, all right, like somebody in a small state, New Hampshire, Connecticut, you know what I mean? And they search by state. Well, they could be right on the border of any of those little small states out there on the East Coast.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'll certainly bring that up to our marketing team that handles that website.
It's actually a great point that John brings up, because I'm actually 45 minutes from Oregon and 2 hours from Idaho and have milled in both locations. But though the Pro Sawyers Network has actually gotten me work over the years, not in those states for that very reason. And I know Michael's actually pretty close to the California state line. Now, I don't know if you want to go down to California, but you can't. You're not mobile yet. But I mean, you know, that is a great point that John makes, that we did ask Wood-Mizer. So I went and met with Brett in Wood Village, and Brett and I have talked lots of times. I knew James pretty well. James had a funny story he used to tell before he got retired about doing a service in suburbia on a sawmill. It's something he'd never done before, because where I live is not where I mill. And but you know, they said then that it was something that, you know, maybe we could look at that. But honestly, with today's technological world, I don't see why that couldn't be. You couldn't put a service area in, right, that would include possibly multiple states even, because I know
go by
the
zip
gentleman
code.
down. Sorry.
Go by zip code and like a 100-mile radius of a zip code.
Yeah, exactly. You know, now there are guys, though. I know some guys down in the Klamath Falls area that will travel 12 hours to run their sawmill if someone's willing to pay them. And honestly, now I'm no longer on the road. I used to mill 100% on the road mobile. So that's why you might see on my channel the Sawdust Roadshow. One of my customers called it that. But I don't now. But when I did, I would travel as far as anybody was willing to pay me to travel. And if that meant Montana, okay, or I don't care, I'd go to Illinois. But, you know, I mean, so from John's point, I think it's a really good point that it would be good for Wood-Mizer to do that. And maybe though, not necessarily from a demonstrating standpoint, but it could be, but definitely from the business side of getting work.
Yeah. Oh, from the demonstration point too. I've done, I think 3, you know, demonstrations, and you know, 2 of them were out of Indiana, and I think one of them was out of Missouri or something. You know, he came all the way up here to do a demo. But you know, so even from that, searching for somebody who could do a demo would be a plus for Wood-Mizer, I think.
Yeah, you know, the tough part about the demo. Go ahead.
I was gonna say I definitely will bring that up, and I think, you know, especially on the find a local sawyer side, you know, for customers looking to have something sawed, you know, that's a focus for Wood-Mizer, is that our customers are successful. So any tools we can have to make sure that they are successful, whether it be leads on sawing jobs, things like that, we want to make happen. So I don't think that'll be a huge stretch for us to do that, a search by zip code or something of that nature. But I don't want to speak for the marketing department, but I'll definitely.
Hey, the more noise we make for them, you know the old rule: the squeaky wheel gets the grease.
Well, Jack, there's a question up there right now, and I'm kind of interested in that myself.
Yeah, so the Kilted Sawyer is asking, how is the battery mill doing? Sells specifically the first year out. And so, you know, we've had good interest in this mill. You know, certainly not the same as our, it's not equal to the gas powered or diesel mills. In Wood-Mizer, you know, creating this mill didn't have that intention. It's not a replacement for gas or diesel powered sawmills or you know, AC electric mills or anything like that. But we did produce this sawmill with the logic that there are some states, some countries in the world, some municipalities in certain states that are enemies to fossil fuel engines. And we wanted to have something for that customer that wanted to still wanted to saw lumber. And so we went down this road to produce a battery powered sawmill. Now we have sold some in the U.S. here, you know, that I could see. You know, there's I'm sure out in the world we've sold some out there as well, and pre-sold, and they are starting to come available here soon to ship to customers. And so I had the luxury of doing the testing on the you know, one of the test sites for this battery mill. And so I did quite a bit of sawing on it here in New York on all different types of species, different sawing environments, including cold weather. That was a big concern. You know, how would this mill act in cold weather? And some of the as long as you brought your batteries inside to charge in the cold weather and went out and saw, it doesn't matter how cold it was, you could saw, and the batteries would stay warm just from that draw and from sawing. And you with 6 batteries, I consistently would see 8-hour run times. That's an 8-hour sawing period. You're making your cut, shutting your blade off, pulling your board, going back, cutting again. And so that was quite impressive. And the other thing that really impressed me was the power you had. And we advertise it's 10 horsepower, but it will output up to 18 horsepower as needed. And so you would see that with that, and it would not be sluggish whatsoever. I mean, right through the wood, just like our 20. It's a wide head, so just very comparable to the 25 horse gas engine that we put standard on our LT15 wide. And so a very impressive mill. When we did engineer this, they put in some SetWorks programs there. They also had a smart feed technology added, where it would actually sense the amp draw of the motor. It would increase your feed rate or decrease it based on that power draw. So as it approached a bell and a log and it was starting to draw more power, it would actually slow up the feed rate, just as the Sawyer would do, listening to the motor and listening to the blade. So it did all of that. And so it's I'm excited for it. It's a good product. Again, it's not for everybody, and I don't think it's for the majority, but it's for customers to have a choice that may need this battery application. Question here on the screen: on the WM4500, the hydraulics seem slow/sluggish. Is the hydraulics on the WM2500 fast as on the LT70 Super? Are there steel wheels on the 2500? Limit is max 1.5-inch blade on the 2500. And so for the sluggish, I've never heard the 4500 hydraulics been categorized as a sluggish mill, or the hydraulics being sluggish there. So I'm not sure if there's maybe an issue with a 4500 that might be going on that you've witnessed. So the 2500 certainly has fast hydraulics. Definitely, I would say a little faster than the LT70. It's got a hydraulic pump unit that's 10 horsepower motor that's just to run the hydraulics. I think it's just over 7 gallons per minute capability on that pump. So, very fast hydraulics there. It's in the industrial class of sawmills. And so we realize we can't have, sluggish or slow hydraulics there. We, on the 2500, it comes standard with belted wheels. However, on most of our industrial products, we could have a conversation about steel wheels if that's something that the customer would want or need. But there's advantages and disadvantages to both belted and steel. But belted is how it comes standard there.
Now, Jack, your Resharp program shut down, and I understand there's still some of your dealerships that still sharpen blades. Is that true?
Yeah, and so Wood-Mizer started this service back over 20 years ago called Resharp. And that was a term that's now, I guess, a verb in the industry. People talk about that. They don't sharpen blades, you resharp them. That was a Wood-Mizer term, a Wood-Mizer trademark, Resharp. And we at every Wood-Mizer company-owned location, that would be Indianapolis, our headquarters, our Northeast branch in New York State, our Southeast branch in Georgia, our branch in our Northwest branch in Oregon, Portland area. They've all had a Resharp center. And then a lot of our authorized sales centers or dealers, they're like a dealer, they're a privately owned business that represent our product, had their own sharpening services as well. And Wood-Mizer corporately made the decision to step out of the sharpening business, and that was a business decision of Wood-Mizer's. There was a lot of factors that went into that, and it wasn't a decision that was made lightly. As you know, our customer success is very important to us, and so it's been something that we've corporately been thinking about for a while, and it was the timing was right for us to do that. A lot of things going against us, the shipping prices being one of them. And so 90% of our blades that were sharpened at a resharp center were UPS'd in. They weren't dropped off. Now, if you were near a Wood-Mizer location, you had the luxury of dropping them off and picking them up. That saved a lot of money, and that was nice. But most of our customers had to ship them in. And shipping costs now are so high that by the time you paid your shipping, by the time you paid, labor, which, that's an issue, either getting labor or the price of labor, the costs were so high to sharpen a blade that the price to sharpen and ship to be successful at it, for us to continue in the business and even break even, not just be, profitable. We never did it as a real money maker, which is to service the customer, but even to stay in operation, those costs, we would be nearing new blade price. And so instead, where we've pivoted is we still manufacture our blades, and we still manufacture blade maintenance equipment. So that being the sharpeners and tooth setters. And quite a few years ago now, we released our CBN sharpening technology to the marketplace. And so customers can have their own sharpener and use the same technology we use in our manufacturing plant when we profile grind our blades. And it's the same technology we use in our resharp centers. And so they can have that at home. And we're also seeing quite a few customers see the resharp closing as a business opportunity, and they're sharpening blades for other sawyers. I've had customers folks come that don't own a sawmill. They've sharpened circle blades and planer knives and things like that. And people are asking them constantly, do you sharpen bandsaw blades for Wood-Mizers? And so they bought, I would call, our industrial blade maintenance equipment. So if you're familiar with the sharpening products, our BMS 500, which is very similar to what we use in resharp, that'd be an industrial sharpening machine that uses an 8-inch CBN wheel. And they're sharpening blades regionally. So we're seeing these little sharpening centers open up all across the U.S. And so now, and I think it's going to become more and more of this, customers will turn to someone more local to them to sharpen blades, rather than shipping to this super sharpening center that's sharpening blades from, 500-mile radius or 1,000-mile radius, what we used to do. And so we're supporting those businesses and getting the product they need to sharpen and set blades. And we're seeing a lot of that. But we also, we have, the BMS 500 on the large end, and we offer sharpeners on the small end. If you wanted to stick with our CBN sharpening technology, we offer we call it a BMS T50. So ST sharpening and tooth setting 50, and that model will sharpen and set your blades. It's capable of doing both, and that's priced at $2,250, so $2,250. And you'd purchase a CBN wheel and some grinding oil, and then you're in business to maintain your own blades.
All right, we have another question there, Jack, for you.
Yeah, so do you see Wood-Mizer expanding more into the forestry side of things, like snatch blocks, skidding winches, log arches, etc.? Yeah, definitely. We're always looking to expand on our product line and more into that from forest to final form. We've kind of gone from the sawmill one way, and now, there's definitely some room to grow before the log gets to the sawmill. So what I would say is stay tuned.
Well, when you need to do some beta testing of that new special prototype equipment, I know a few of us wouldn't mind giving it a try.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
So, Jack, you want to explain the warranty on your mills real quick?
Yeah. So on the sawmills, we offer first we offer a 30-day money back guarantee, and so you purchase your sawmill, you get it back to your location, and you realize that's the mill's not for you, or whatever. You're not satisfied with the mill. You can bring it back within 30 days, and we'll give you 100% of your money back for that sawmill. Bearing that there's no significant damage or something like that. And, a common follow-up question to that is how often does that happen? And very, very little. I've seen sometimes where a customer has bought, let's say, a manual mill, and they think that they can get by that way. And they realize that maybe they're not, it's something, physically fit, or if they realize this is a lot of work, I want to move up, or that wasn't the mill for me, I made a mistake, and then we'll take it back and then get in the mill that they need if they didn't get it the first time. So I've seen that exercise in that way. And then from the 30 money back guarantee, in addition to that, we offer a 2-year warranty on the sawmill, 5-year on the chassis of the mill. And there's engine warranties through their respective manufacturers. And so through Kohler on the gas engine has a warranty, Yanmar on the diesel engines. And so, we've, with sales and service locations all across the country, if there's an issue with the mill and we're made known about it, we're certainly not going to leave you in the lurch. And we'll make it right. And if there's a customer that gets a mill home, and if something happened to go wrong, or we don't know if it's wrong, we just want to see what's going on there. If we're in the area, which we are, we're usually in each of our regions, we're delivering sawmills or out doing service calls. We'll work that in so a customer doesn't have to pay mileage or anything, and come and just check out the mill, see what's going on. And again, that just comes back to making sure our customers are successful with their mills. And if they're successful, we're successful as a company.
You want great customer service.
That's right. So that question there says continued. I don't know what the first part of it was.
I just clicking through some of the comments. That's all, Jack.
Yeah, that's actually James has come back, and he wrote a little bit earlier. Let me back up, guys. We got to back up a little bit because he did answer the questions that I asked him to clarify. So he said, end dogging to greatly reduce labor and reduce log handling time. End dogs simultaneously clamp into log ends and raise logs above the bed with log centers at equal equivalent elevation, and have 90-degree stops as a scrag mill. And then, so this is kind of a follow-up after that, but are you familiar with scrag mills?
I am. Okay. Yeah, but are they maybe asking on a portable application, like a scrag style mill?
Yeah, he didn't say that.
Yeah, there's some similarities on our industrial mills to scrag style, and the different ways we break down logs. Some of our small log processing, twin vertical mills. If you looked at our website, it kind of shows different setups there.
Actually, he did. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Jack. What he did say was, so this goes to his original question. Any thoughts to a set of manual or hydraulic rotating end dogging attachments for the small band mills? But I think he's asking for like an LT15.
Okay. And so when we look at these, added features on these mills, we have to have the balance of, features and cost. And once you start adding some of those features and hydraulics and things like that, the costs get right up there to these larger hydraulic mills, and so that's the issue we're running up against there. I think that our current log handling systems are definitely do a great job, but that doesn't mean that hey, we've got to figure it out. We can engineers can take the week off. We're always looking to improve that, and so if there's any ideas that a customer has that they think might work better on a mill, we always encourage you to contact a Wood-Mizer representative, and we could work through that with you.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point, because it's kind of like, and I'm just going to go back to the LT10 for a minute, but it's kind of like the old LT10. You didn't make a trailer for the LT10, but you did for the LT15. And so it's kind of if you really want those features, the cost of putting a trailer under the LT10 would have pretty much made it the same cost damn near as an LT10 or LT15 Go. But one of the things that I'd like the audience to know is that when I was doing my own customization, Wood-Mizer actually helped me out with a few different aspects of having to put that LT10 on a trailer, because you can't just set it on a trailer and go. Not if the trailer looks like mine did, because now your scale's off, all kinds of things are different. And so Wood-Mizer actually helped me. I ended up going to an LT15 lube setup, and I had an LT28 log clamp, and so those are, and Wood-Mizer helped by providing me the drawing, not a CAD drawing, but an actual drawing that says this is what the LT28 clamp looks like. And then we scaled it ourselves and made it work for my mill. So, I mean, I suppose if you wanted to create some sort of end dogging, I'll bet you if you talk to somebody back in Indy, they might give you some ideas and help you come up with some ways to make it work. You never know. Kind of like the umbrella stands. Wood-Mizer actually asked me how I did my umbrella stand. Now, maybe you'll never do one yourself, but I was asked how I did mine, and maybe they'll decide to use that.
Sure.
That's a good question for you.
Okay, so Mike had a video of 90-degree turning logs and would like to have log stops on the opposite side of the mill. Any way to do this on an LT15? So it's engineered to have the back supports or side supports, often called, on the one side of the mill. You definitely be a custom fab there. No plans to do that. I've had customers, if they wanted to load from the opposite end, you could put your clamps up in the air to be kind of a stop there. But if you wanted to turn to it, let's say if you're grade sawing, where you want to kind of choose your face and you're turning quite a bit, you do have to kind of turn it maybe 3 times if you want to get back to that face. On the manual mill, unfortunately, that's kind of one of the woes, that it's a lot of handling, and you do kind of have to keep turning it that same direction, rather than go over there. On the hydraulic mills, the turning is so fast that it's not a real concern. You can, just the other day I was grade sawing cherry, and I could whip that cant right over with using the clamp so fast, and then look at that face and see if I want to cut on that face. And I say, oh, not that one. And I whip it back over. Okay, that one's free of knots. Clamp it and go. So there's really not a big concern. And that's probably why there wasn't a huge demand for a different design there.
So there's a great question on the screen, but before you answer it, I'm thinking that we should let John, and I'd like to take a crack at it too. So John, and I'm butting in here, I know, Rick, but this is one that's near and dear to my heart, and I know John can answer this question too. So John, how about I let you take a crack at it before we let Jack get in there? Because I'm going to explain why. So guys, I've been running a cantilever mill since early February 2016, and I don't know how long John's been running his, but I know he's been running it long enough to do grade sawing on hardwoods. So go ahead, John.
That thing can shake all at once. When it goes into that log, it's straight. It's 90. It's straight. There's a straight cut. I don't care what the video show. You know, I've seen my videos, which suck, but I've seen that. You know, that head bouncing. And you think, oh man, there's no way that's going in there straight. But I'm telling you, you know, after the first centimeter, that thing's straight as, you know, all you can get, all the way down, 16 foot, 21 foot, whatever you want, it's straight.
Yeah,
My LT15 the same way. It shakes all over the place, but it's still cutting straight.
yeah, and
Yep.
it's not even a cantilever mill. And so here's so for sawbuck, sawdust, and rust, I will tell you a quick story. And I milled 40,000 board feet for a customer in 2018. And while I was milling that, a local lumber yard came by and they said, I never buy lumber from band mills. And then he started looking at what I was doing and he said, wait, this is a band mill? And he actually offered to buy all 40,000 board feet of lumber I milled for his business. So was my lumber flat and smooth? Yes, sir. Absolutely 100%. So there you go, Jack. I let that in for you, but I love my cantilever mill. I'd never go to anything else.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, Wood-Mizer, when they created that patented design of a cantilevered saw head, the idea was that this would be a portable mill and that a customer shouldn't have to spend time with a level, you know, and leveling that sawmill after you unhook it from the truck, and then put a log on, and then one leg sinks in the sod, and now you got to re-level the sawmill. Those are some of the woes from a twin rail mill, a 4-post mill. That bed has to be level, and so with that cantilevered head over the bed frame, it's always 90 to, you know, very parallel to the bed, and if the alignment is correct. And so we've had that patented design, but we ran into customers saying that didn't know or didn't have an experience with a cantilevered mill, saying, I would never buy a Wood-Mizer because I don't trust the cantilevered saw head. And so we realized that. So that's when we came out with that LX 450. And that's a 4-post twin rail mill that gives customers a choice. But with doing that, frequently a customer will come in and say, I want that 450. I want it supported on both sides. And that gives us an opportunity to speak with a customer and share about the cantilevered saw head, give them a demonstration, let them get their square out and their tape measure out and look at the lumber, and then talk about why that I would never be able to sell a 4-post mill to someone who's owned a cantilever. They would never take anything but that. And lots of times that customer that originally came in for the 4-post twin rail mill, they're going out the door with a cantilevered mill now. You know, we've sold some 450s and they're an excellent sawmill, and but definitely that cantilever mill is the popular one, and definitely has its advantages. And not only being portable, having that side open for odd shaped logs or large logs is a game changer. You know, I've always sought on cantilevers, and then when we had some twin rail like the LX 450 come out and sawing on it, you know, that somewhat built some frustration with me because I said, well, man, this is a pain. But really, I had to kind of say, wait a minute, this is an excellent 4-post twin rail mill, and it is. And if you're stationary, and I think that, and you're dragging everything back to you, it's a good mill. But for let's say if you're edging on the sawmill, that cantilever mill's nice. Having that trapezoid design bed to be reach right in there to grab your flitches and organize them. They're just endless pros versus the cons list. And we still have, we go to trade shows all over the country. I go to nearly 20 in my region a year all over, and we saw at every show. And a customer comes up and they see the mill, the head may move when you engage the clutch, you know, from the torque of the engine. And you go into the log and customers say, well, how can that cut accurate lumber? The head's moving all over the place, they say. I said, you know, and just like it was mentioned, you know, once it's in the wood, it stays true. And go look at the lumber pile. that's the true test. How's the lumber look that you pull off the sawmill? And it's, and if it was cutting bad lumber, then we're not going to continue to cut. So it's definitely it's a good product.
Absolutely. We have a neighbor down the road that bought an LT40, I think in the late 90s, and it's still going real strong.
Nice.
And it's cutting accurate lumber every day.
Yeah. All right. So message from James. Yes, for the LT15 type mill, 1 day in the in home shop plus $100 material cost, end dogging, log clamping, raising, 90-degree log rotating. Looks like the solution for on-manual log handling. 1 day in shop plus $100 material. Yeah, I'm not sure what the cost would be. It seems like it would be more than that material for something like that, but I'm not sure. Certainly, if I don't know if you're a fab guy, but if you had a design, I'd be willing to take a look at it and see what you're thinking.
I'd just like to take a second and give a shout out. We have a lot of visitors from X on here tonight. I'd just like to tell them thank you for joining us. We're glad to have you on board. All right, guys, any other questions you can think of? The audience questions have slowed down finally.
Back to the log stop on the other side. Part of the reason a lot of us would like to have log stops on the other side is so we can turn the logs the other direction so the blade can enter from the already cut side, the clean side. It helps keep from having to cut into so much bark. If they would come up with some kind of an attachment or something that we could put log stops on the other side, maybe even something that would slide like the log dog does, that would make the LT15 a lot more usable for those of us with dirty logs.
Okay. Yeah. So you open up one face and then turn it 90 the opposite way, clockwise, if you're, from the sawing location. And okay.
Yeah. The standard way, the way it turns, we're cutting into the dirty side all the time.
Sure.
Well, I liked what you were saying earlier about the price. Like the LT35 is set, the price is set here, and people are always saying, well, why don't you do this, and why don't you add this, and why don't you add that to the 35? Like the jacks. They always say, why do those jacks standard jacks? And I'm like, well, you can get an upgrade to the jacks. You know what I mean? If you want. I want the standard jacks because I want my price down here. If you want to upgrade to that, go ahead, and that's one of the great things I liked about, the Wood-Mizer too, was you always got that option to go up to something else, add something else onto it. You know what I mean? There's always a little step you can take,
right,
for a little bit more money or a little less money, instead of making everything standard, that you have to get debarker on the 35, and you have to get the advanced jacks, and you have to get the trailer package or what, you know what I mean? You have to get the diesel on the 35. I don't want the diesel, because I don't want to pay that money. And that was.
Now, Jack, you sound pretty knowledgeable about blades. Tim and I pretty much use 10-degree blades. That's the one that seems to work the best for us.
Mm-hmm.
What's some of the advantages of like using a 4-degree, like our counterpart over there, and 7-degree blades? I think Eric uses a lot of those.
So we a few years ago, one of our guys at Wood-Mizer wanted to kind of compile the information, so you could say, okay, if I'm cutting hemlock, and I want this blade. You could go on the website and tell you what blade to use for that species of wood. But what we realize and that it's different. It's different in the region you're sawing. So the hemlock in New York is different than the hemlock in Vermont or Maine. And so there's the variable of the wood that changes. There's the variable of the sawing style. So sawing fast versus sawing slow, that's a variable. There's a variable of the sawmill itself, the horsepower of the mill that you have, the blade RPM that you have. And so it's kind of regional. And so you'll notice that if you talk to a Wood-Mizer representative in New York State, you talk to a Wood-Mizer representative in Oregon, they're going to have a different answer for you for what they think runs the best. And it's just based on customer feedback from their region. So so I'm going to give you what the New York, what I would say, what we set up customers with. So on the manual mill side, that the 10-degree profile is definitely our most popular, our 1030 profile, which is an industry standard profile, very popular profile with Wood-Mizer and other blade manufacturers. And that'll saw in our region red oak and softer, so some of your softer hardwoods, your hemlock, your white pine, your red pine, your firs, things like that. 10-degree does a fine job. I saw that cherry the other day with a 10-degree blade. It did a good job there. On wider cuts and more horsepower mills, we typically set the customer up with the Turbo 7 profile. Now we have two profiles that are in our turbo class, with the Turbo 739, which was our, entry, what we hit the market with a turbo profile, and then our 747. Both are a tall toothed blade with a very deep gullet. And so kind of an aggressive tooth. And with that, with a wider cut, it's a deeper gullet. And so it carries more sawdust out. If you were in a wider cut with, let's say, the extreme opposite with that would be our 9-degree profile, which would be a kind of a hardwood blade or a frozen wood blade for a smaller mill or low horsepower mill that has a shallow gullet. So if you're sawing something wide, like an LT15 wide, let's say, or a 40 wide, 50 wide, 70, you'd run out of gullet capacity on that wide cut, and you'd have your sawdust spill out in the cut and cause some cutting issues. We've seen that. And so the turbo profile is typically what we pair customers with on the bigger mills. Now we've got customers that have slower sawing styles. They started with a Wood-Mizer in 1982, 83, 84. They've had that mill. They saw slower. They have lower horsepower. They've been sawing for years at that speed. Probably the 9-degree profile, the 1030, is what they'd want. If you're looking for faster feed rates, the turbo seems to like faster feed rates. You can push it a little faster, and we put someone into that. As for our others, with the 4-degree is popular up in our sales center up in Maine. They sell a lot of 4-degree for frozen wood, and folks really seem to enjoy the 4-degree there. I've heard of some 4-degree even in Northwest for Doug fir. So it's kind of regionally there what blades work for each application. And I always tell customers it's good to have a couple of profiles in the barn. You know that you kind of put it in your notebook. That 1030 sawed that cherry beautifully, and you might get into a saw job where that cherry didn't saw so great with this profile, and you say, what, that time I had that 1030 and that did the trick. I'm going to pull that off the wall, and then you could saw it. I had a customer the other day come in. This week that was sawing some spruce, and spruce knots are one of the hardest things to saw. And I was able to share my experiences with that. And this customer had an LT40, and I paired him up with a turbo profile, but the 55 thousandths thickness. And the pro of that is it has a high beam strength because a thicker blade, so it can stay truer in those knots. So it does a good job of creating good lumber. But on a 40 head with a 55 thousandths blade, you do lack in flex life. You have a thicker band, and so it will break sooner than an 045 thickness blade. on the 19-inch band wheel because of that turning radius being sharp with a 55 thousandths thick blade. Most of our customers are running an 045 for thickness. And the customers that are familiar with our part numbers, that would be a B375 prefix, 475 for that 55 thousandths thick blade. So that customer is going to have some 55s in his barn. If he ever gets into spruce again, he can pull that off and saw. It's not going to be his blade forever for every application. But really, it's just regional and lots of variables there.
I see.
9 Degree does great on our cherry and beech nut. Yeah. So my uncle, that's his blade, 929. That's all he runs. He sawed every bit of hemlock, cherry, oak, everything in his camp that he made. He built a house with a Wood-Mizer LT15, and he sawed it all with a 9 Degree. A 929 was 29 degree back angle. So that's the Wood-Mizer slang for a 929 blade. He loves it. So 7/8 tooth spacing, the most popular. I heard the band you spoke about earlier, the 3/4 tooth spacing. I'm not sure I mentioned the tooth spacing earlier, but we do make different. We offer different tooth spacings. I think Brett up in Oregon may pair some bigger tooth spacings for different sawing applications. I've heard even the Doug Fir, I think, took a bigger tooth spacing, or they liked a different tooth spacing. Tooth spacing comes into play sometimes with moisture content and width of cut. I've seen customers go a little bit narrower, or more tooth per inch on resawing applications and things like that. You think of a shop bandsaw having more teeth doing the cutting. But for the 90% of portable mill owners sawing green logs, the 7/8 tooth spacing is what we sell, and we have rarely have different tooth spacing stocked. At least my location, 7/8 tooth spacing is definitely the king. And so this customer, I am the spruce 95% of the time. I love my 10 degree double hards. So that's, I wonder if he's running 445 or 55 or what, but it's regional, it's sawing style, and he likes his 10 degree. And if it works, keep it. That's what I'd run, whatever works for you.
I just personally, if I'm 10 degree, perfect for that as well, the double hards.
Yeah. And so, we didn't really mention that. We do offer, we did mention the bimetal a little bit and different blades, but we have different material of blades too. So when we talk about, you hear double hard. Double hard is a high alloy steel that we induction harden the teeth, and so that's our most popular blade. If you were to go to a Wood-Mizer store and buy a blade, it's most likely going to be a double hard blade. We also offer our silver tip blade. So silver tip is a little bit more economical, high carbon steel. It's not as high quality of steel as a double hard, but very good blade there. And we sell those as well. And that matches most of the other other blades in the industry. It would be that class of steel, that carbon steel there. And so that's also what we sell to our blade dealers. And so someone mentioned Joe Main earlier with ICT. That'd be an example of a Wood-Mizer authorized blade dealer, and they buy the blade coil stock from us. And so we manufacture the blades into a big coil and sell it to them, and they will cut and weld to length for customers in their region, their own customers, Wood-Mizer blades, and sell them. That's what Joe sells. And the double hard is exclusive to Wood-Mizer sales locations, but you can buy a Wood-Mizer silver tip blade from a coil dealer regionally, and there's numerous in the country, ICT being one of them. How do we get a file ID jig? So we have them for sale. We do offer them. I'm sure I can get one sent your way. And yeah, we have it's a nice like keychain that has laser cut steel each profile where you can actually match it up to the blade, so it can tell you what profile it is.
Is that a new one, Jack? Because I know the old ones were about that big.
Yeah, it's a new one. Yeah, the old ones had some, an outdated profile on it that we don't mark anymore, and it didn't have everything. The 13 degree, and
yes,
so
I was going to say 13 degrees. Yep.
Yeah. So we have so this new one is a little bit more comprehensive. It's got just about every profile that we manufacture, and it's nice. It's laser etched. It's cut out with each profile with a laser, and so you can set it right in there and tell you what blade profile it is.
Those are nice. A couple of weeks ago.
I take it for granted because I look at blades nonstop. So, I could tell you what a profile is just by looking at it. But I realize that, that's not the case for everybody, especially if you have a mixture of blades. So it's nice to have that
profile. I paint mine. So, my 7-degree bands get yellow paint. My 4-degree bands get orange paint.
Nice.
But after you run through them, and unfortunately, because I like to experiment, I've got 9s and 10s and 7s and 739s and 747s and 4s. And sometimes you kind of go, what the heck is this? and I have the old gauge that has the 13 degree, and it also has like an inch and an eighth or something on it.
Right.
And so the only good ones for me on there are like 7, 10, 4 and 9, which I think it has those still, but not 739 or 747, for example.
Yeah, right. So those new gauges, they come with the sharpeners and tooths, the sharpeners that you just buy from Wood-Mizer.
Yeah, but I ain't gonna do that.
Right, but you can buy one separately.
I'm one of those holdouts that ain't sharp. I'm gonna send my bands to somebody else.
Yeah.
I'm one of the guys that was frankly pissed when Wood-Mizer quit doing it, because I went, well, now what am I gonna do?
Yeah.
But I've got about 100 bands, so now I'm just collecting dull bands, so I can send them all off to Craigie over in Utah, so he can sharpen.
There you go. Perfect.
Hey, Jack, this question popped up earlier.
Yes, I saw it earlier there for a second. Yeah, so it says, not sure how accurate the BMT 250 tooth setter is, but I know there is a BMT 300 European model where every tooth was set very accurate for smooth cut. Why is the setter not available in the U.S. line? And so that product, especially with the Resharp news, that the blade maintenance product line is growing every year, and that was a product that was engineered at our European facility, which is in Poland, and is marketed there in Europe. And we've brought products from there before, from our European partners, and brought it over to the U.S. to sell here, and that may very well be a product that we decide to do based on demand. What that product differs from the BMT 250 would be it has a little bit more it's a little bit more intuitive, where it would measure your tooth set as it's pushing on it with a computer, and I believe it has some set knockback capabilities if it got set too far. The BMT 250 has a dial indicator when it's pushing that tooth set over, so you actually see how far you spring it and then come back, but each adjustment is manual. And so you manually set your pusher, and set your throw of how far you're pushing that blade. Because remember, we're using spring set blade technology, and so we spring set, meaning we're pushing it back, and it's springing back to wherever its final set is. And so once you get that down pat, that BMT 250 does a great job. And it pushes 2 teeth at a time. It's setting 2 teeth at a time, then advancing, and then setting 2 teeth at a time. So it does a good job. But that tooth setter very well may become part of our U.S. product catalog.
Okay. So the questions have slowed down.
Oh, I got questions.
Well, go ahead.
So I have to throw this out there, Jack, because, and I did this to Brett, I don't know, a year or two ago, but one of these days you guys are going to have to take the LT40 and start making some stuff that you don't make for it. So, you know, you've got, I want to say the Wood-Mizer works on a 15. The lap siding jig, I think, works on the 15. You know, it's time to make those work on a cantilever mill.
Those two products will. Yeah, so
The
they
lap
were.
sider will.
Yep.
Okay, so I guess I'm thinking of something else. There was something that was on an LT15 that I wanted, and it didn't come in an LT40 model. So I guess my brain is getting addled and old, and I've forgotten what it was.
Yeah, so you know the SLR shingle lap sider jig, the resaw attachment.
What about the shaper?
Yeah, so
What
all
about the
those.
shaper?
The maybe are you talking about the that log molder planer?
Yes, that's what it was.
Gotcha. Yeah, so that is exclusive to the 15 just because of its size. You know, it fits on that 15 bed. That's what you're thinking of there. Yeah, and that's certainly something that you know we could look into, kind of having something hug that monorail that would be similar to
You'd
that.
almost have to have either something with a head like the Sawmill's head or a bolt-on right side rail that it could ride.
Yeah, right. So that
I mean,
product, for those that aren't familiar, we call it our MP100, and that is a log molder or a planer. And so that application would be if you sawed a can out and you wanted to make let's say D-face log, and you want to stack them up, make a cabin, or you wanted to plane your timbers down to S4S your timbers, then this machine would have as a planer head that runs on top of the timber on the LT15 track is what it runs on. So you can straight plane, or you can put profiling knives on there to do a D-face, to put a cope on it or tongue and groove, whatever you want to do. So
yeah, that's the one I was thinking of. It took me a while to think about it, but that's the one, because I've been working on D-logs for a while, and I thought, man, if I could do tongue and groove D-logs like you can with that molder, that would be so sweet. And so, Michael, I know you want to build a cabin, but if you haven't seen that, you ought to check it out because it's pretty sweet.
What I want is a debarker. I have the LT15. I'm happy with the LT15. I don't produce enough volume to justify getting a bigger mill, but I really want a debarker. What is the smallest mill you have that has a debarker? That's the biggest problem in my milling is dirty logs.
Yeah. So currently the LX150 has the debarker option. So that'd be in the manual mill range there, on the ground mill, not portable. You know, you could pick it up with a tractor or something, but that's made to be stationary, bring the logs to it. That is a debarker option. And then our LT35,
that's a twin rail, right?
That is a twin rail.
So, Michael, maybe you can adapt one of those to your LT15.
Yeah. The issue, I mean, it'd definitely be custom. The issue you would run into is the charging system. The LT15 isn't equipped with an alternator or an external charging system. It has just the charging system of the Kohler engine, so it shouldn't be adequate to run the debarker. But I'm certain it could be done, and it has been done by other customers. But
yeah, because that motor is almost the same motor I've got, right? I mean, I've got the Kohler 26.5 horse. He's got the 20. You got the 25, don't you, Mike? Mike Cole.
I have the 14.
I don't want your mom to see that. Oh, yours the 14.
She doesn't watch live, so you're safe here.
Yeah, he has the 14.
I have the 14.
The LT35 The LT35 is the other machine that's of a cantilevered head. So we have a 35 manual and the LT35 hydraulic. And so the 35 manual is also, you can be equipped with a debarker. But I'd say, with Wood-Mizer, it's not off the table indefinitely. As we talk to customers and get feedback like this, that might be something that we look at doing in the future.
Consider this
There's
my
a question for you,
official
Dick.
request.
Okay,
for
thank you.
LT.
All right, Hard Rock.
But you need you need to upgrade. You need to upgrade to the 26.5 horse motor that's got an alternator that's big enough to handle it, and then you're set. What I want for Wood-Mizer to do,
I'm all for it.
it would actually, you could do it. But the one thing that I always struggle with is the seat. So the seat has always been an option. It has for a long time. But getting a seat, if you didn't choose to get one, and now you're a busted up old jarhead, and you are going to have a seat because you can't walk too much anymore, seems to be a challenge. And I'm wondering if Wood-Mizer has ever thought about, and I know you might not have this answer, but a lot of guys buy mills with seats and then don't use them and decide to get rid of them. And I'm wondering, do you ever get them brought back to you, or people asking you to sell them?
We don't typically get into the, bringing in parts like that. That would be considered a part and try selling for customers. Every once in a while we get that. But we do have them. I mean, we have them available at a couple, locations right now that I know of, that they're there and ready for a customer if they wanted one. And if a customer wanted one at, their sales location, we definitely could get it there. But we manufacture them still, the operator seat. So they are available.
The station that goes at the end of the 40, so you don't have to walk with it. The fixed station.
Well, the problem with that is, and I looked into that too, but I was told by Brett that there's too much work to do to try to change a walk beside to a the control stations or consoles, the end of the mill type. It's just too much work to make that conversion. And he said they don't do it because there's just too much work. It'd be too expensive. They basically tell you to buy a new mill. I get it. I mean, I get it.
It'd be like a Flintstones car.
Do what?
I think it'd be easy to do on the LT15. It would be like a Flintstones car.
Yeah.
That's a little different. I could ride my ATV back and forth, maybe, right?
Right. So Hard Rock Vermont question here. We are looking for building projects on the family farm here in Vermont. Would you recommend the LT15 wide? So like there, lots of variables there. Vermont, you're in my sales area, so feel free to give me a call on Monday there. You can look at wood-mizer.com and our location for our information, how to contact me. But Beckwith at wood-mizer.com by email. But we could talk about that. 15 wide's a very capable mill. You can get the wide head cut capability, 35.5 inches between the blade guides. It's rated a 36-inch diameter log. Great mill for someone that wants to cut their own timber and needs the wide capability. But we could certainly chat more about your needs. I can get a fat guy?
Back to the earlier question. One of the things I always try to ask people is, I started with an LT10. You guys have heard me say that 47 times tonight. But honestly, you can talk to Paul and Andy and Michael. If you've got a strong back, you're physically able to do the work, then and you like to do. I certainly loved it when I had a twin rail underground mill. But if you're busted up like I am, then I always say, if you can afford hydraulics, look for hydraulics, because especially a lot of guys that ask me that question are 65 and up. And let's be honest, as you get up there and you got the whiskers now, the body doesn't always agree with the brain. And so hydraulics makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're looking to saw, especially if you're looking to saw all day, that couple hours on a manual mill, you're like, all right, I'm getting have enough of this. Not saying it can't be done, or guys do it every day, but hydraulics definitely make it more enjoyable.
And it's just so much easier to it's so much easier to quarter saw. It's so much easier to grade saw, because on the manual mill, I ran one for a couple of years, for about 3 or 4 years. But your grade saw and you think, okay, I really want to get, that third side. That's what I want to saw off of. And you're on that manual mill and you're going, yeah, but I'm just going to take one more right here and then turn it,
Right.
And on a manual or on a hydraulic mill, it's just, you just turn it and grade saw so much easier, with the hydraulics. That's definitely the way to go.
It probably depends on what size logs you're using too. I use a lot of small logs. For me, turning it's so easy on the LT15, but if I had a lot of big logs I was milling, I think the hydraulic would be a lot better.
Yeah, I think that's a great point too, right? If you're milling for yourself and you're only milling 1 or 2 hours, if you're milling small logs, right? I mean, you're not trying to do grade sawing. You're not going to production saw. You're not looking to saw a 42-inch, black oak or something. Yeah, you can get away with those. The hydraulic mills, they're expensive. Let's be honest. But on the other hand, what you get for that is pretty incredible. I mean, I'm at a point where I can't pick the stuff up anymore, but you know what I can do? I can lift up my hydraulic toe board rollers and lift the log up off the deck and slide the forks of my tractor right under the log and pick it up and drive away with it. So you get so many benefits, like John said, on the hydraulics, that I always try to tell people, if the old injuries are going to come back and haunt you, that's when the hydraulics start to really save your back and arms and legs.
Yeah.
See, what you guys need is right there.
Yep.
Paul's got one.
Well, so Michael, have you done that black oak yet? Have you sawn up that black oak log yet? Nope.
It's right behind you.
Oh, there it is.
When you're turning that, you did it. There you go. When you're turning that, just imagine turning that all day versus a pine.
Piece of cake.
Back to that, I can't remember the name. The guy in Vermont asked about the 15 wide. Probably the best channel to check that out is Cripple Creek. They're in Vermont, and they have an LT15 wide and put huge white pines through it. It's a lot of work, but
you guys have put some big logs through your mill. I've watched you guys put some big logs through that mill, and and I'm always like, ow.
You got to think first before trying to pull it.
Hey, Jack, I know we told you it would only be like an hour or so. If you got to go, just say you got to go. I mean, I don't want to keep you on here if you're not having a good time.
No,
or if you have to be somewhere else.
No, nowhere else to be tonight. So.
No. Well, then you're in trouble now.
No.
Now it's about the time where things get a little crazy.
Yeah.
And I want to go back to the fat guy seat thing. Yeah, you can get a fat guy seat, but I think of it as the busted up old guy seat.
Well, Eric, isn't your mill set up for a seat?
Well, all of the LT40s, you could put a seat on them.
Well, we happen to have a neighbor down the road. We have a neighbor down the road that has a seat, but he doesn't use it. I might be
That's
able
a
to talk
long
to him.
ways to ship. You see, the thing is, I'm a busted up old jarhead, so the shipping would cost me more than, you know. I mean, if you think about it that way, there's a reason I haven't bought a new one, because I can't afford it. I'm a broken jarhead who does YouTube. I can't afford a new seat. I spent all my time milling for other people.
I'm going to the Adirondacks here real quick. Eric. I can get it to Illinois for you if you can come get it from Illinois.
You know, I've been
meet you halfway.
I've been told several times. I've been asked several times if I take the old Jarhead Sawdust Roadshow on the road without the sawmill, though. And I've often told them I would love to, but I'm not quite there yet. The problem is, you know, fuel ain't cheap. You know, it ain't $2 a gallon anymore. So, but I do someday. You never know. I might get out there, guys. But I keep telling Jake Dean and Lynn and all the guys from Forestry Forum that I try to make the Georgia meetup someday. And I was even going to try this year, but it's 3,500 miles. That's a long ways, even when you're flying. So,
yeah, that's
and
a few
Jack,
miles,
in case you didn't
sure.
know, Michael is south of me, about 12 hours of driving, but we're both on the West Coast.
Yeah.
So we're way out here and, you know, on the left coast.
Was my mute button on when I was telling you about the black oak?
You were, yeah.
What'd you say?
Yeah. It's okay. We've been talking about you behind your back in the private chat too. And John.
Eric, quit being so bad. All right.
So, at any rate, now you guys are located in Hannibal, New York, right?
That's right. So that's near Syracuse. If you're not familiar, I mean, you guys are here from New York State, where Hannibal is, but near Oswego, right the southern shore of Lake Ontario in upstate New York.
Now, have you heard of anybody pulling logs from Ontario in the deep water and sawing them?
A little bit. We've seen that, you know, with logs that have been in that environment. Definitely is where we see that specialty blade used, you know, some bimetal or carbide. You know, there's lots of dirt and debris, and of course, and all those logs. So I know down south, sinker cypress is big, you know, and so they use those blades for that.
Yeah, I've seen programs where they pull logs out of the deep lakes up there and saw them up.
Yeah,
I guess the grain is so close because it's old growth timber stuff you
Right.
don't find anymore.
right.
Jack, you
Yeah.
see that question there?
Let's see here. Will there be a better chain auto type feed option for the LT15 in place of the rope? There could be in the future. We do offer like our LT28. If you go from the manual feed, the crank or the push to power feed, you use it goes to a chain rather than a rope. But on the 15, we just offer the rope at this time, and it's still with the if you get the power feed option for the LT15, it still uses the rope, and for the most part, the rope does a very fine job. And if the rope wears out, it's just a 5/16 rope, I believe, and replace the rope, and it goes for, you know, hundreds of more hours. And so we've had really good luck with that rope feed design on the 15s.
I'm curious, Michael. I've never noticed. Are you cranking yours, or is yours auto feed?
Mine's walk behind. I have to
Oh,
push
you don't have the crank?
I don't
you
have a
push.
feed at
Okay.
Right. So
I
the
thought-
LT15 start does not have the crank, but it does have the push handle. So you push it through the log.
Okay, like the
That's what I
LT10
have
had.
to
Okay,
start.
so Paul and Andy, you have the crank because I've seen you use it.
Yeah.
I never liked that
and the
idea.
rope does
You guys
work.
like it? You like it, the crank?
it's handy. It gives you the mechanical advantage, but I would love a chain over that rope. It's not that it doesn't work, but because as it goes around the crank handle, it catches on each other and sort of gives a pulsing motion. The rope, as it goes around that shaft on that crank handle, it can overlap. So it sort of catches and this doesn't seem to be quite aligned right, and there's no adjustment to it. So.
Does that change your cut, the look of the cut at all? Does it chop it up?
No, but that's usually why we have a hand on the push bar and on the crank at the same time, one hand on each, so you can smooth it out with your hand. Offhand.
Well, you see, Jack's writing it down.
That's right. Yeah.
I just think a chain drive with gears would line up better and be, I don't know.
That you could run with a drill.
Right. Now, Tim, does your mill have an auto feed, your new one?
I can get it for it. I don't have it on there right now.
Okay. So yours push.
Yeah.
Mine's
Auto
push right
feed is available for both of our mills, but it's a $2,500 option.
You're like me; you can't afford it.
Push on mine.
Well, it's a set works that
Anyway, so I might as
Mike
well be
was talking
pushing.
about.
Yeah, we can get the computer set works for ours also.
So that's beautiful.
But
Michael, what were you saying?
I was saying I like the push on mine. I have to walk behind it anyway. I might as well push. Then I don't have to wear my arm out cranking. But maybe if I tried the crank, I would like it better.
Or you could get your wild deer to pull it for you.
They were running in the background a little while ago.
Hey, Jack, is there a Wood-Mizer dealer in Vermont?
So there's not. We have so in the Northeast, our authorized sales center, we have one in Maine that services northern New England. So Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine are mostly serviced out of that Maine authorized sales center. And we have one in southern Pennsylvania as well, in Shade Gap, Pennsylvania, operated by Marty and Lisa Parsons and family. And so that's, Virginia, West Virginia, Maryland, southern Pennsylvania. And out of the New York branch here, we do sell out of this office for all of New York State, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, New Jersey. And we do sell and service in the entire Northeast. If the customer chooses to go through us, and we do service in those areas. So lots of customers in Vermont. It's kind of right in between the New York branch in the Maine and the ASC in the state of Maine. So it's really the customer's choice whether they buy from New York or Maine. Pricing's consistent throughout the whole country. So
There's the question for you there, Jack.
I need parts compatible between the new 50 Star and the LX25. Seems like there might be some upgrades for us LX25 guys. I'm not. I don't have a list of compatible parts. I know there are some compatible, and then maybe some compatible with some custom modifications. But no list at this time.
Getting a little chilly there, Mike?
Yeah, see the car.
The wind's getting a little chilly.
Is
Back
that
to
on your face?
Back to the subject of dirt. There's been some topics on my channel about dealing with dirt. Is it important at all to get rid of embedded dirt on the exit side of the log? I do a lot of dug fir, and it has deep furrows in it, and sometimes there's dirt in there. If I had a debarker, would I still need to clean that dirt out? Or does the dirt on the exit side not matter at all, even if it's caked on thick?
It's not nearly as critical. And so as much as, with mills equipped with a debarker option, the Wood-Mizers are, on the larger mills, that's just cleaning the entrance, and the exit, it's really just, it's kicking it out. Now, that being said, in that embedded mud or in that bark, if there's a stone out of the exit, you can still not do that a set. And
Breaking up, Jack.
Pretty cool. So, so it's nice to get keep the logs as clean as possible, even on that exit side. But if I had to choose, if I'm sawing on a mill, especially with a debarker, I'd probably choose, have my mud towards that mud saw debarker. If I didn't have a debarker, I'd definitely put my worst side mud-wise if it didn't affect my sawing face. There's a lot of variables there, where I want to replace that log to open the log up, but I put it on that outside if at all possible.
I'll tell you, I mean, hundreds of hours of not cleaning logs. And the only thing I will tell you is if I'm in the gravel, then I will definitely try to go through both sides quickly with a wire brush sometimes. But the vast majority of the time, I could care less. I throw my debarker on the infeed side and move on. And I know lots of guys on Forestry Forum talk about the outfeed side, but after hundreds of thousands of board feet of lumber, I haven't worried about it, and I keep going, and I can get 2 hours out of a band anyway, which is what Wood-Mizer tells you. You should only run your bands for about 2 hours anyway. So I don't, as long as I do it as long as I use my debarker, which sometimes I don't use. The times I don't use it and I don't clean the bark off is when I'm doing slabs for live edge stuff, because you don't want the debarker to cut into the wood, and it can do that. So I don't take an axe to them. If I see big rocks, I'm going to get rocks out of there, but otherwise hit my auto clutch and head into it.
Right.
Since you bring up the subject of 2 hours on a blade, does it make a difference on how powerful the mill is? Say the LT15 in 2 hours, maybe it's not putting as much stress on the blade. Maybe it's not cutting as fast.
Good question.
Could I get away with longer on the LT15?
Yeah, I mean, really, it comes down to, there's lots of variables, but, how clean the logs are being a major one. But how much wood that blade is cut. If you're sawing, large cants and you're only making a couple of cuts and you're kind of going and, 2 hours, maybe, you still have plenty of sharpness left of that blade. But if you're sawing, siding 1 inch material and you're just making cut after cut after cut after cut, then that's where you might be, an hour and a half, you might be looking at it being dull. So 2 hours is definitely kind of an average. And as you go with a wider mill, so a longer band with more teeth doing the cutting, we see longer blade life, longer sharpness. All those teeth are sharing the burden. And so we've seen that with customers that have grown from an LT, let's say LT40 to an LT70, and having a blade that's 158 inches long on the LT40 before it went wide to 195 inches on the 70. The blades do stay sharper longer because of that longer blade. And so they may be able to keep a blade on for 3 hours between changes.
Yeah, the one thing that Brett told me was 2 hours in the wood. And I think that's important, right? On an LT15, you're not going to be in the wood as much as a LT35 or an LT40, right? On my LT40 in 2 hours, I can be in the wood damn near the entire time almost. I've done logs in 6-7 minutes and done multiple logs in an hour, literally. Like, my best day was over 26 logs in 8 hours. And I don't remember now what it was, but I know I got one video out there with 26 in 8 hours. That's a lot of wood. You're in the wood constantly. Yeah. So, 2 hours in the wood, that makes a difference. That might be 3 hours on an LT15 or even 4, right?
Right. The other variable there is flex life. When we're talking about bandsaw blades, you only have so much flex life of the blade. And so if your blade's not in the wood, and if it's not going to be in the wood immediately, so if you make a cut and you're coming back and you're not going to go right exactly into the wood, like on a manual mill, for example, there's some, maybe some figuring, you're looking at your scale and coming down, and seeing where to make your next cut, that's when we would encourage customers to shut the blade off between cuts. On an LT40, LT50, LT70, once someone gets proficient at it, lots of times they'll leave the blade spinning while they're making cuts on that face. But we encourage customers, when you're turning the log, you're stopping, do not leave that blade spinning, because that blade can only whip around the band wheel so long. And then before it gets gullet fatigue, and you'll have stress cracks in the form in the gullets. And lots of times it won't show up then, but they'll go and have their blade sharpened or sharpen their blades, put the blade on the mill, and then within 10 minutes, the blade snaps. And they say, oh, well, what happened? What happened at my blades, when they were sharpened? And most of the time, it's because they were overran before that sharpening. And when we're sharpening with a CBN wheel, we're only taking so much material off at a time. And if we don't go deep enough, which typically 1 or 2 passes just to clean that gullet up, if we don't go deep enough to address that microscopic stress crack that may be there, it's going to snap on you. So if you turn it off between cuts and you pull it off while it's still somewhat sharp and it's not duller than dull, you're going to get the most board footage out of that blade in the end.
I did not know that.
Point. Yeah, that's a great point. I got to say, anybody leaving their band running when they're taking measurements and doing something else, to me, that sounds like a recipe to lose an arm. I mean, I can't even imagine. I run my band when I get into it. I call it rocking and rolling. When I'm rocking and rolling, I don't shut her down. It's out the end, up, back, down, in again, over and over until that log's gone. Like, I'm just going to rock and roll till I hit the deck. But if I need to adjust anything, the auto clutch goes off, I stop the band, and I make those adjustments without the band running. I did not know what you just said, though. I just did it because in my mind, that's just safer. I mean, you're talking about something that can cut a log in half, let alone that.
Right. Yeah, definitely. What question is it? Goes to a question here. Is it correct that a thinner blade will turn more times before it stress cracks? Yes. So, the standard 0.45 thickness on our portable mills definitely will spin longer on a 15, a 40, an LT28 than an 0.55. That being that thicker steel, it will gullet fatigue faster. Question: we only get our blades resharpened once. I check the blades for cracks before I send them off. If I'm cutting hardwood, I take breaks to let the blade cool. When we talk about heat, with blades, lots of times if you're building heat, there's an issue there. Either the blade's dull. So if I got, let's say, an LT40 where you have a hydraulic blade tensioner, if you're cutting and you see that blade tensioner dropping tension rapidly, that blade is getting hot and the blade is stretching, relieving that tension. And that's an indicator to somebody that your blade's getting dull because you're building heat. The lubrication system that's there is mostly to keep that blade clean, not really to keep it cool like a metal sawing application. So if you're building heat, either there's maybe a guide issue, if it's building heat from the backside, a bearing on a blade guide, or on the front side, the cutting edge, it's that blade should really just glide through the wood, want to eat the wood. It really shouldn't build any heat from friction.
That's, of course, you're milling old dead Doug fir. Come on, Michael. I'm right. You get those old dry Doug firs.
Yeah, those are hard to mill, but even when I don't use lube, I've never noticed my blades get hot.
Yeah, I mean, I get into some stuff with the 40 because the 40 has the dial gauge on it, and Jack's right. You'll see it start to dive on you. You'll also hear it. When you mill enough, you'll start hearing the band change pitch. And it'll change its tone. And dead dry big timbers. Oh my gosh. I mean, I did a job with a bunch of 24 plus inch Doug firs that were all dry, and some pondos, and they were all dry. They'd been sitting for months. I was doing a band of log, but those logs were 500 plus board foot logs, but 18, 19 feet long and 24 inches on the small end. But a band of log, and near the end of the log, you could just watch that gauge start to drop on you. So I got somebody on the other side cranking it up. I'm pouring the lube on, just trying to finish that cutout, and the band's singing, the head's starting to chatter. You're done.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't
Yeah,
know
it's
if
funny.
my torque has enough power to pick up a blade.
little 14 horse. Hey, I'll tell you what, on my little LT10 that I had the 10 horse on, I'd have loved a 14 horse. The 7 to 10 was a massive change.
You talked about listening to the blade, and you get kind of used to what that should sound like, because you're running all the time, and even at a show, if I start hearing, I'll be talking to a customer, and one of my guys are running a mill, and I'll hear that famous sound of the blade when there's pitch buildup. You could hear that on the blade. And then as I look over at one of my guys, and mode, it's like a drink glass of water. Just do this to them, and then they turn the lube on, put some water to it, quiets it right down. So if you see me doing the show, that's what that means.
Just
not
get
saying
your beer.
bring out the bourbon.
Right. Yeah. All right. Do you see Wood-Mizer offering more mills in the future with bigger wheels other than the Super 70? A Kilted Sawyer asked. It could be. I don't think there's anything in the pipeline for that with the bigger band wheels. I think the 19-inch band wheels that are on most of the portable mills are proper for that sawing application. We've had good luck with that. Where we've seen the benefit of the bigger band wheels on the LT 70 is, with that bigger, you have a bigger depth of cut. So if you are splitting a log, if you wanted a quarter saw or something like that, that's handy. Also, on that WM 1000, that blade, that mill that does 67 inches wide, has very large band wheels. And so you can almost cut the whole log without moving the flitch, just cut all the way through. It's so deep between the blade and the frame. But for most applications with the portable mills, the 19 inches have been done well.
What about this next question, Jack?
Yeah, heat kills the blade, as you mentioned. Sap buildup causes heat. Some people use diesel as lube. What's your opinion on diesel and the band wheel belts? And so, at Wood-Mizer, we don't recommend diesel fuel. Now, we have lots of customers that run it, and they do a diesel drip. That's their own prerogative if they want to, use diesel fuel. However, it is hard on the belts. It's hard on the bearing seals. It makes a mess of the sawmill. So we most, like say in the Northeast, our sappy species would be larch, white pine, and some red pine will build up on the blade, and usually a cup of vegetable oil and a squirt of Dawn dish soap with your water, just to let it, the oil emulsify. Or if you use, we sell a product, an additive through Wood-Mizer that you can add to the water. It's kind of got a detergent value to it. That does, 90% of the time it'll cut the pitch and do it and keep your blade clean. Then water, mostly for the other species, will do it.
On this next question, we cut a lot of hardwood. We cut a lot of hard maple. I'd rather cut white pine, but because of the pitch, I find it's easier to cut hard maple.
Yeah.
And you probably run into that as well, right, Jack?
Yeah, absolutely. We've had customers come up to the show and say, I see this mill cuts this pine fine. How about you put it to a true test and put some hardwood? And anybody that sawed, the bandsaw knows that softwood seems to be harder to saw than hardwood. And that being the challenge with softwood is inconsistent densities. When that band runs through the softwood and you hit that hard knot, how is it going to handle that hard knot?
Slow down.
That's right. And so with hardwood, it's most species are consistent in density and are easier to saw. But we have a blade that will handle any species that you can put on that mill. And so we just change the blade for the sawing application, and maybe our sawing style changes a little bit. But that's Wood-Mizer band mill can saw softwood and hardwood, anything you throw at it.
Anybody says they can't, point them our way. I know Tim's done it on his mills, but I've done tons of black locust. And that may not be the hardest, thank you, Rick, the hardest hardwood in North America, but it is definitely up there. And it's hard to saw. But they know why they're laughing up there. If you guys don't know, it might be an insider joke. But honestly, the hardest thing I think I've ever milled was a monster ponderosa with knots that were that big. And the only way I found besides slowing down was shutting the lube off. And that was, thank you, Jake Dean down in Georgia. If it wasn't for Jake, I'd have never heard that. But shut the lube off and then watch your speed going through those knots. Otherwise, softwoods are harder to mill, frankly, simply because of the change in dent. You're going through that nice softwood and you hit that big knot and all hell breaks loose, right? Your band's going to go up, down, somewhere else. I think the band is basically saying, oh, to hell with this. I'm going home.
All right. James has a question. 3-blade mill on the band mill carriage, 2 movable edger blades, 90-degree rotatable to also cut a curved path for the following band through a dirty log, enabling production also out of slabs. Okay. So you're edging your flitches as you're sawing. And I've heard this idea. Not that it's off the table, but definitely would be something. Lots of more components, and it may be something that would maybe more on the industrial side, but definitely could be done, I suppose.
That's a good question.
It is, but I want to jump into this one here because Michael, watching Michael's stuff, or you, Tim, and Rick, and actually Paul and Andy. It never occurred to me that John and I are lucky because flitching is easy to do. And I know, Rick, you're doing it the way I do it now. But flitching's easy to do when you can just push your flitches off onto your forks. And then after you mill the log down, leave a couple pieces of lumber still stacked up on it and throw your flitches back up and knock them down at the same time. So we actually have it easier than the guys with the mills on the ground, though I have seen Rick and Tim now do it that way a lot of the time as well. And it's a little harder for you guys, but you still do it that way. And do you like doing it that way now, or is it more work for you or less?
I think it makes it easier. It certainly keeps them straight.
Let's put it this way, Eric. Flitches are for bitches. No doubt about it. We hate them, but we do it.
I don't mind flitches so much.
The other night we sawed a 30-inch white pine, and we were sawing 1x12s, and we had a big pile of flitches. I had a guy come up. He's looking for a certain type siding. It just happened to be Adirondack siding, which is live edge, basically. He goes, "Oh, I'm looking for this right here." I'm like, "I'll sell you the whole pile." And I gave him a price, and he loaded the whole pile in his truck, and away it went.
$5. We made on no aggravation that night. That was wonderful.
That's what I said. I said that's why they came up with live edge siding. Michael, your mic got all kind of noisy on us there, so we didn't hear you. I know you wanted to tell us how much you love flitches.
I'm actually starting to tolerate them more now that I'm turning the log 90 degrees, because most of them have a flat side on them now. If Eric would have told me that a year ago, I would have started turning 90 degrees back then.
Eric never thought about that because he's got an LT40, and for Eric, it was all about speed. That's it. But that's good that it worked that way.
Hating them to mildly disliking them now.
Rusted Old Iron's asking, how does Wood-Mizer sharpen? Sharpen first or set first? And so we recently with Resharp, we would sharpen first and then set. So this was to be the process with Wood-Mizer Resharp. We would take the blade in, organize them by profile. So we would run, let's say, all 10 degrees, and split up the customers. And so we'd have around 10-degree wheel. We put them on the sharpener, and we'd sharpen them. Sometimes you sharpen them twice, depending on how the blades look. And now we've, adjusted that tooth height because we've sharpened it down, with the sharpener. It'd go into the wash station. The wash station also had a set rollout feature, so it would push if a tooth was knocked way out of set, the customer hit a rock or something, it'd bring it back in. So they're all very similar in their position, and then they would go to the tooth setter and they'd push them back to the factory spec, whether it be 25 thousandths or whatever for that profile. Then they go back to the box. I'm getting ready.
Chris, I would recommend letting those locust logs sit for a year or two before you try to saw them.
No,
come on. No, don't do that. Actually, no. You guys, I'm so gullible. I'm like, why would you tell him that?
Come on, Eric. You don't know us by now?
Yeah, let it sit. Sure. Stack and
the drier, the better.
Yeah, you better get a diamond cutting wheel. Do you have diamond cutting hands, Jeff?
Locust cuts so much better after about 5 years sitting on the ground. Man,
hey,
nice.
When I lost my voice, it was like 2 years ago, I think, milling locust in Pendleton. That was all dead, dry. That stuff was, not only was it hard, but there was a ton of rot in it. So you'd get into a log and it would just be rocks and rats' nests in the middle of the log. No wonder I lost my voice. But you better wear an N100 mask when you're running. If you're running dry locust, it is gross.
Well, I know
black walnut's bad too.
I know in locust, if you're going to drive a nail in it, you better do it while it's green.
Well, it's better milling it that way too. Oh, I didn't say that, did I? but Chris, my after doing some testing, I love sevens. But honestly, the 747, it was like slicing butter, buddy. I just didn't like the 747 clears out so much sawdust so well that when the wind is aimed right at you and you're a walk beside, all that sawdust goes right in your face. And so just if you buy 747s to mill that black locust, don't cuss me out if the wind is straight at you.
Oh, look, he says they've been down for many years.
They should be easy then. Easy. Put them on the mill.
Easy peasy.
Use the dull
Yeah,
blade.
just use a dull blade. You don't even shouldn't
That's all
even
you need.
sharpen your blade.
Hey, is it like cutting tin, turn the blade backwards and run it backwards?
Might as
It'll
well.
be about like that.
Oh, good Lord.
And there was a question for Michael there.
Yeah.
I just saw.
I only sell rough sawn. I've never used a planer. My opinion is Douglas fir isn't worth enough to take the time to plane it.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. It's worth a lot, but not from a resale standpoint. You can't compete with the big
Right.
mill. Yeah.
Douglas fir lumber sells around here fairly inexpensively, and to take the time to plane it, I'd be competing with the lumber stores, and I think people buy from me because they want full dimension rough sawn lumber.
Amen. Stuff you can't buy anywhere else.
Well,
I think they'll actually even pay more for the rough sawn than they will plain lumber from the store. Actually, I don't think that. I know that.
Yep.
Here on the East
Absolutely.
Coast, Doug fir is worth more in Home Depot. It's $1 board foot more in Home Depot than it is for regular spruce.
I know it's crazy.
Way
Well,
less
I mean,
than
it's
$1
better than
board
spruce
foot
for
here.
building. Of course, you guys over there, you guys have any? You probably don't have SIP. So, are you using mostly spruce, or what are you using for construction grade?
In construction, they usually use for local wood, they use hemlock or white pine.
Okay, white pine. Gotcha.
Our hemlock, the eastern hemlock, is almost as hard as Doug fir.
Oh, I would have thought it would be harder.
No, it's not quite as hard as Doug fir.
Oh, okay. So that'd be a good wood then.
We have a lot of requests for hemlock.
Termite resistance. Well, locust would be real good, but tamarack, larch, tamarack are pretty good. Cedar.
Yeah, we got a lot of larch here. Tamarack, same thing.
Yeah. A lot of farmers like to use it for fence posts because it lasts so long.
So
that black locust.
Oh, so Southern California, SoCal, that's Michael's territory. You're I don't know. Do you have tamarack down there, Michael?
They don't have it in California, but maybe incense cedar.
Oh,
They might
yeah.
get the sapwood, but I think the heartwood would be resistant.
There you go, Jack. There's a question.
Yeah. So does Wood-Mizer sharpen edger blades? Who makes the EG 100 edger blades? So those edger blades on the EG 100 are sourced from our facility in Poland, and so they come from Europe. There, we don't sharpen the circular blades. We just sell the replacements now. They are carbide tipped, and so if you had a shop near you that does sharpening of circular saw blades, certainly can be sharpened, but we did not include that with every sharp service, just the band mills.
Well, Chris, you're going to have to let us know in advance because I'm sure we're all going to pull out the popcorn to watch that.
Yeah, just put us on a notification list.
Absolutely.
And don't you dare add music.
Yeah.
You just have to check that little button when you're making the video.
Or you could do like the Jack in the Box music. Ding, 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 ding.
I want to hear the frustration.
It's really not that bad. I'd rather cut black locust than I would white pine. You know, that white pine, those knots are a nightmare. You know, just like we just said earlier. That black locust, at least you know where you stand with it. You know what I mean? It's hard.
Yep.
It's coming out of there just like flour, and you know it. And you get through a log, and you know you have to change your band. You know, there's no question about it. Where white pine, and you can saw through that softwood and hit that knot, all of a sudden you're like, man, I just changed this blade, 15 minutes ago, and now it's diving in this knot. But black locust, it'll let you know if that if that blade ain't sharp, it's burning that wood.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I think
And
Grizz isn't Grizz on the West Coast?
West Coast, yeah.
He's in Oregon.
There's a difference between the West Coast hemlock and the East Coast hemlock. I think they're a different species.
Our West Coast hemlock is a lot like true firs, like white fir. They don't even distinguish the difference between the two usually when they make lumber out of it. It's soft, light wood, probably equivalent to the East Coast balsam fir.
Well, it's funny you say balsam, Michael, because when I worked in a pulp mill, we used hemlock and balsam, and that was on Vancouver Island. And it's good pulpwood. That's the way we looked at it. Soft, super soft, good for cellulose.
Someone asked the difference between Western and Eastern. What were we just talking about?
Hemlock.
That really hard wood, not
Locust.
Locust.
There actually is no locust on the West Coast native. All of our locust is brought in from the East Coast. It was planted here. So I believe it's the same.
It was our gift to the West Coast.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Makes excellent firewood.
I hate hearing that, though, because it makes good lumber. But, that allows me to segue into the one thing that we haven't really talked with Jack about is something that surprises people, but you guys make firewood processing equipment as well.
Yeah, we do. So on the, kind of fitting in that forest to final form, using all the tree, we still have to process the tops of the trees as well as the saw logs. And so we do have some log splitters. We haven't went into the processors yet to actually, buck the logs to length or anything like that. But we do have 3 models of log splitter, and they are a wedge design that they're a box wedge design splitter. And so our entry level is our FS 350. That'll split traditionally the ram going one way into a box wedge. Includes you can give a log lift option on that. And then we have our FS 500, which is our largest splitter that has a log lift, and it features splitting both directions. And so there's a wedge at each side of the ram, and you push your wood through, and then you can pull your piece over, set it down, and then split the other way. So you're not wasting a stroke of your ram. You're always splitting with each pass, which is pretty handy.
I heard on the wood processing part, I heard the keyword yet.
Yet.
Yeah, you never know, right?
Rick, you've cut southern yellow pine before, haven't you? Yeah, it's a harder wood than white pine. I don't know where it stands on the Jenka scale, but it is a harder wood. That's all they use down south.
Would it be harder
to buy at Home Depot?
Keep that flat?
Nope, it's
I've
easy.
never had a problem keeping it flat.
Let's see. A question here in South America, cutting tropical soft and hardwood. Is there demand for tropical hardwood in the U.S.? Here we have a species called Laba. It could stand as fence posts for 70 plus years. Yeah, I'm sure there is. The challenge is, importing that wood, has to be, heat treated, and, there's a lot of expense that goes into that. And sure, there's a lot of tropical hardwoods that come in for specialty woodworking that are, you see in specialty wood shops all over the place. And we'll have, people will resaw it into 4/4 lumber and then market it. That is an option for marketing that in the U.S.
No, balsam fir is not sold as spruce in New York. I mean, some people might sell it as spruce, but there is a difference.
Well, guys, I hate to do this, but I'm going to have to call it for me. So thanks again, Rick and Tim, for putting this on. And I'm not, I'm for those watching, I'm just myself having to bail. But I don't want to cut you all off. But Rick and Tim, much obliged. You guys have done a great job. Jack, Awesome talking to you. Never met or talked to you before, other than on Facebook, I think once or twice. So good to see you. Good to meet you. And John, Andy, Paul, awesome guys. And Michael, we're going to get together here pretty soon, buddy. This is, tax season's over now, so it's time. You guys
have a good one, Eric. We're going to wrap this up pretty quick anyway.
All right. Well, have a great night, guys, and we'll talk to you again soon. And by the way, I'm going to do a live tomorrow night, but it's not all going to be sawmilling. I will be probably talking about solar tomorrow night too. So if you get bored, I'll be on my usual time tomorrow night. So y'all have a good night.
All right. Good night, Eric.
Good night, Eric.
Good night, Eric.
All right. There's a question for you, Jack.
Yeah. So it says Rusted Old Iron asked, not that I had an issue when I bought my mill. There was an 8-month waiting time. When picked up, my warranty started when I placed my order, I'm guessing, versus starting when I picked up. There must have been a misunderstanding. The warranty starts the moment you take possession of the sawmill. And so that's recorded when the mill is invoiced. And so with Wood-Mizer, it starts the day you take possession is when that 2-year warranty starts. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Okay, guys, I think we're going to wrap this up. We've been on for 2.5 hours. Don't feel that long, does it?
Holy cow.
Nope.
Is there any last minute questions? Put them up there real quick.
And I'm glad you came on, Jack. I'm impressed and thankful that you were here for sure.
I think this was our best show by far.
Yeah. Good job.
I see Joe Main's in here. Hey, Joe, can you contact Rick? He's been wanting to speak with you. And, or did you already leave a message with them, Rick?
No. Contact us at TwoBrothersOutdoors@yahoo.com. Jack, just hang tight a minute. When we shut down, we'll talk with you just for a few minutes before we get off of here.
Okay.
All right, guys. All right. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for joining us tonight. We appreciate you showing up, and thank you for all the questions. And we'd like to thank Jack for joining us from Wood-Mizer to make it a very interesting evening. Everybody have a good evening. We'll catch you on the next one. It's on the 3rd Saturday of every month at 8 o'clock. So until the next one, we will catch you guys later.
Bye-bye now.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.